All right, guys. So, welcome to coaching of ACH. We're going to get into this very, very soon. We've got 3 days ahead of us. I want to preface this training with this, as I normally do. Forget about ACH for now. Let's forget about Mac. Let's forget about trainers training. You can combine all those things together when we get to the demos, but there's a certain part that I've done on purpose. There's a certain part of all the trainings you've done that I've left out. Okay. And that's what we're going to be covering over the next 3 days. Demos are going to be super important, but not the way you think. In the past, when we've taught ACH, who finds that the demos are very stunted? You think, like, Scott, shut up, just let them talk, let them go through. There's a purpose to that because there's little chunks I've got to teach you where we normally get one long demo at the end, which is covering everything. What I want to do with these demos, only if I don't want to force it, only if it goes that way, is go from start all the way to finish. But I'm going to preface that with a few extra coaching ideas that'll make your job a hell of a lot easier. Okay. So, what I want to do first is the cheat sheet. Just have a look at that. I'm not going to share my screen because then it's too hard and too choppy to go back and forward. I'm going to read from my laptop as I mentioned. Let's go through this first. Is there any other questions? Sorry, before we start, everyone's happy just to dive into it? Everyone's good? Okay, cool. All right. So the CACH cheat sheet, you want to use this ACH cheat sheet as a quick reference manual for applying the core principles of coaching ACH during client sessions and mostly important practice. It serves a concise reminder of the key strategies, therapeutic frameworks, and intervention patterns that help you keep these ideas in mind. Inspire, invoke, activate, and stimulate the unconscious mind. What do I mean by these? These words are chosen perfectly and on purpose. What does ACH do at its most fundamental place? What does it do? What did it teach us?
Untie knots.
Untying knots, spotting unconscious moments. That's really the basics. Okay. What did Mac allow us to do?
Future pace, kind of.
Yep. What else?
Motivate.
Motivate. What else? Really, one main
Find
thing.
more options.
More options. It was really to master the hypnotic interview. So ACH as a foundation is really the whole thing at a very basic level, even though it's very advanced. The hypnotic interview, the Mac was just focusing on the hypnotic interview, mastering that to get quicker processing, which means a quicker breakthrough, but also using motivation, the unconscious mind. So what's left is the therapeutic part. Now, in the past, what is the main instruction for a client to get therapy? Let's say that we've got them to this place where they're processing. What do I normally tell you guys to do? That at the most basic level is very, very simple.
Processing.
Process instructions or just be quiet.
That's it. And already that's super advanced. What I'm teaching you now might seem like, well, you should have taught us that in the first place. No, because then you'll overdo it and you'll only do this. Sometimes silence is perfect. Sometimes process instructions is perfect. But what about when it's not? And I mean that with a K and an N. When it's not, we've got something to inspire, invoke the unconscious mind for deeper and what I call further processing. Remember, I've coined processing as they go into the room, they try on the suit, and they find the best suit for them. Everyone's pretty familiar with that. What if we got really greedy and said, hey, unconscious mind, why don't you find all the suits you want instead of just one? Who thinks that would benefit a client long term? Right? So they have a suit for dinner, they have a suit for breakfast, they have a suit for their wedding, they have a suit for this. They have hundreds of different suits to suit different parts of their life. Longer, further processing where the one suit they got at the start isn't needed for another 2 years. So as they grow and develop into a different person, they've got a suit to match the occasion. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to do. By inspiring the unconscious mind to do more instead of just choosing one, which is limited, and do more and increase the imagination. Maybe it's putting 3 suits on at the same time. Maybe that's the perfect fit. That's what we're going to inspire the mind to do. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to be focusing on that therapy part. All right. So your evolution, actually, before we get to that, which is what I just explained, I want to throw this statement out there and I want to see you guys if you know what I mean. To be smooth, to be slow is to be smooth. To be smooth is to be fast. What do I mean by that? To be slow is to be smooth. To be
Well,
smooth is to be fast.
as you slow down as a practitioner, the process for them is smooth,
Mhm.
and the smoother it is, the faster it becomes for resolution within them.
That's what we're going to master in 3 days.
Yeah.
So we're going to slow down everything you do so it's smooth and seamless. Because I get it. I can say it till my face is blue and say, don't solve the problem, slow down, stop trying to, do things, get rid of the pressure off you, but we all still do it. So one way, and the best way that I was taught, was just to slow down. It might seem so slow to you, but it's going to seem super smooth and fast to them. Does that make sense? And this quote is taken from the Marines. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen it on YouTube or something. When Marines go into, or any sort of military go into a house to clear the house, the way they learn it is super slow, like slow motion, one tiny little step at a time. Go into the room, check the left nice and slow, check the right nice and slow. And they do this hundreds of times. So when it's called for it, when they're in battle, when there's a lot of pressure, it kicks in automatically. So wouldn't that be nice for you guys? Instead of trying to slow down, it just kicks in automatically. And again, you can see this in Erickson. If you get to watch any of his demos, he's so slow and smooth. There's no umming and ahhing. There's no thinking. It's so fundamental in his mind where it's not him doing it. Now, do you think that would stop resistance or cause more resistance by you slowing down?
Less.
Less. What could it indirectly tell your client to do based on psychotic insight if you're slowing down?
They slow down.
Yes. Now, when I say slow down, I don't mean start saying, okay, please. I don't mean slow down like that, but I want you to slow down in your approach. Okay, to really slow down this idea of trying to solve the problem. Because again, I can say it over and over, but some of us still fall into that. So when we do the demos, it's going to be super slow. It's probably going to feel a bit awkward. But at the same time, it allows me to coach you and say, okay, Marshall, we're at this point right here. You might only see one option, but did you know we can do this and this and this and this? Pick which one you want to do. Says, well, Scott, you know what? I might do that one. Cool, let's try that. Super slow. So when it comes time for the action, it's automatic. Okay, so your evolution as a practitioner is what I mentioned before. ACH, then MAC, then coaching ACH is to inspire the mind for deeper processing and for more creative outcomes. We're letting the unconscious mind do what it does. So the next thing I want to talk about is drifting. It's going to be a key part. And when we look at unconscious moments, I'm going to start saying, can you see them drifting? They are in drift mode. Now, I don't mean drift mode like your car where you hang it around the corner and do all that stuff. I mean drifting as there's a certain unconscious mind that inspires drifting, and you'll see it. So drifting refers to the moment your client begins to unconscious processing. It's daydreaming, it's wondering or imagination. This is the first sign the unconscious mind is actively connecting context and content. What do I mean by this? Who thinks they've seen a client drift before?
Is it similar to processing where they are starting to take whatever insights they got right now for this thing, and it's like, wait, this might change my whole life?
Yes, it's this look. Or it's that looking down look where they're emotional, where they're just purely quiet. Now, in ACH terms, I'd say process instructions. Tell them they're safe. But what if we hijack that moment and make them do more of it? That's drift mode. Okay? Now, drift mode also gives us a way in to tell stories, to use metaphors, to increase what's going on, to inspire the mind for more creativity. Stories are pointless if the client's conscious. Why would that be? Why is timing key?
They can
Because they're
resist,
getting
Scott.
Mhm.
They can resist.
They can resist. So what's the point? Now, unless you've got a slow, methodic voice like Erickson, where people could hardly hear what he's talking about, which I think works in his favor, stories will work anytime. Okay? Timing is key. Just like everything else we've done. Spotting unconscious moment, it's timing. Process instructions, timing. Everything we do is timing. You tell a story at the right timing place, and it can be as simple as this is what I did this morning when I woke up, and it will inspire your client. Okay, and I'll show you how to tell these stories and what to say and how to slow them down so it sounds like something more than it is. Erickson telling his classical growth of tomato plants means nothing conscious, but the way he said it sounds like there's so much going on and so much meaning to this. So we can take a boring story, add meaning, or we can sit here for 3 days and create stories off the top of our head which have no meaning. I know which one I'd rather do. Okay? All right, so when your client's drifting, guys, your goal is to hijack this natural, that's key, drift, and further inspire the mind to process deeply. Okay? We want to use the following approaches to amplify the drift and increase unconscious engagement. All right? So when your client's drifting, just think of, okay, my client's processing. Let's move past ACH. Say, what can I do with this moment? How can I hijack it? How can I inspire my client to do more of it? And pretty much every demo we've done in ACH could have used this. We could have told stories and all that, but it wasn't the time to do all that. All right, so breakthrough storytelling. Purpose. The story bypasses resistance, as we know, and engages the unconscious mind through indirect meaning and association. Indirect. Indirect, indirect, indirect. When I tell a story, Marshall's not in the story. I'm not saying, why Marshall's drifting. You know what, Marshall? This reminds me of a movie I just watched. And you might find yourself, Marshall, in the same place as this character. What have I already done? I've included him in the story. Why would that be a negative?
because you're placing meaning for them instead
Yes.
of them
It's
finding meaning.
Yep.
and it's obvious, isn't it? Psychotic insight.
Exactly. Why would I want to give it meaning? I want him to give it meaning as to why Scott is telling me how he makes his coffee in the morning. It's a pointless story, but if I give it enough emphasis, Marshall takes something away from it. And his mind will fill in the gaps. Now, as his mind's filling in the gaps and connecting to this, whatever this thing is, and wondering why I'm telling it, what do you think's happening to Marshall? Do you think he's processing more?
Drifting.
He's drifting. He's processing. He's actively doing something. But as soon as I place him in that, conscious resistance. That's not me in the character. Oh, I saw that movie, Scott. That's not how it went. I've already lost him. And that's where the traditional storytelling fails. That's why you can't script this stuff. That's why you can't prepare this stuff. Because they're too busy giving meaning. I want to give abstract ideas and have it sound like, or have Marshall try and work out, why the fuck is Scott telling me this? What does this have to do with anything? Oh, now I think I know what he's talking about. I've got him. And it can be as simple as making a coffee, feeding your dog, whatever it is. Okay? So stories bypass resistance, as I said, it engage the unconscious mind through indirect meaning, okay, and association. So let's look at the method and how we do this. Actually, I'll come to you, Marshall, before we get into this question.
Well, I just wanted to ask you if this is yes, beyond the fact that they could resist, what you just said earlier about giving them lots of options at the beginning, when you give it the meaning, okay, let's say they even follow you and they don't resist. Now you've narrowed their choices in some
It,
way, right? Because their unconscious mind stops really looking.
it's
Yeah.
what happens later that I'm interested in. I'll give you an example of this. There's a classical story, whether it's true or not, I think people make up a lot of shit about Erickson. Okay, unless I've seen it on a demo or in a tape, I'm not going to say I've seen it. But there's a pretty common story, it could be just a teaching tale, that there was an Erickson seminar conference where he was teaching people in his little small garage, and he had one lady there. She came in, he went into his normal spiel of telling stories, confusing people. 3 days sitting with this old man, and people walk away going, I don't feel like I've learned anything new. These are psychotherapists, therapists, healers, whatever. Walking around, I don't think I learned anything new, but I feel good. I'm glad I got to meet him. It was a cool experience. 6 months later or so, Erickson runs into a woman that was at his seminar. He's there in his wheelchair with his wife. The woman comes over and says, Dr. Erickson, I don't know if you remember me. I was at your seminar, and it's only just hit me what you were trying to tell me. 6 months. 6 months of connection. 6 months of processing. And I think that's a nice story, and it probably is true to some extent, where that's what he was after the whole time. That was the purpose of telling the story. But the way she framed it was, that's what I think I got what you were telling me. He wasn't telling her, he was telling the group. So when we tell stories, I'm not directing it at even my client. I'm talking to the air. I'm talking to anyone who wants to listen. Does that make sense? And it inspired this lady to process for 6 months before she got it. So I'm not interested, just like processing now, I'm not interested in how they feel now. I want to know, how does Joanne feel 6 months from now? 12 months. Does that answer the question, Marshall? That's what I'm going for. Inspire that processing to go long into the future. Okay? So let's look at the method of how to do this. Very, very simple. If you've got a notepad and pen, you write these stuff down if it helps, but you've got the cheat sheet anyway. We want to base the story on familiar themes from movies, TVs, and books. Who's read at least one book in their life? Who's watched at least one TV show? Who watches several movies? Pretty simple. Okay? And there's certain themes that pretty much all movies and books have, which we'll go through. That's easy because you've done it. And if we keep the story vague enough, here we are talking about Housewives of Canada, whatever show was around at the moment, and I'm turning that into a motivational story, even though it's just women bitching at each other. Okay? But if I keep it vague enough and have the mind think, why the hell is Winnie telling me this story? Oh, now I got it. That's what she's trying to tell me. No, she's not. She's inspired you to connect that for yourself. As I was saying before, you want to avoid placing your client directly into the story. It is not them walking down the stairs and getting deeper. It is not them swimming along a beach, then diving down and going into trance. It is not them who walks along a beach and finds a chest of treasure, opens up the treasure, and your inner child's in there to hug. It's not them, but someone else might have done it. Big difference, right, guys? So do not place your clients. Do not say their name. Do not reference them. You're going to talk it as if you're just talking out loud to anybody. Be a weirdo and talk to yourself. That's how I used to do storytelling, as if I'm just saying it to myself. Okay? Observe your client reactions. Use pauses, pacing, and eye contact. Why would, when we're telling a story, we want to focus even more attention on watching our client? What are we looking for? Any ideas?
You want to make sure that they're going deeper rather than that they're getting all conscious and logical about your story.
Yeah. If my client starts getting conscious, what should I do? Even if I'm halfway through my story, what would I do?
Stop the story.
Stop.
And ask them, how do you feel? Or what's happening?
There you go. Back to classical ACH. Exactly. But if I see Jordan drooling on himself and sliding down his chair with his hand stuck to his head, would I keep telling the story? Better believe it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do metaphors. Then I'm going to do Ivan's favor, which is stacking resources. I'm going to weigh him down with so much inspiration. All he wants to do is just have a cigarette and be left alone and just be in peace and just chill out. That's what I'm going for. And if your clients may have done this where they process so hard and deeply, they just don't want to do anything for a couple of days. They don't even want to go to work. They don't want to talk to him. They just want to be left alone. That's that inspiration. That's what I'm after. It's almost like brain dead. They continue drifting. And then a year from now, Bina turns around when she's been working with a client, said, oh, I finally got it. That's what he was talking about. That's what we're doing for our clients as well. Okay. So if the client begins to drift further or close their eyes, I'll talk about what to do with the eye closure in a moment, utilize it. Always watch your client. What Erickson would do, he'd have a group. And again, this is where I got the idea of doing, if you ever saw ACH live, the one time we recorded it live, there'd be me sitting here and a client either side. That was me mimicking Erickson. So he'd have a circle of people. He'd sit in the middle with his wheelchair, telling stories. Everyone around him would just listen and drift off and do their own thing. Okay. Then what he would see, he'd look around the group and say, okay, Bina's really adopting this story. I'm going to now focus on her. And he wouldn't talk about her specifically, but he'd start looking at her. And if her hand started to lift, he'd include that in the story. He's still talking to everybody else, but now he's focusing on her. So if you see your client really get involved in the story and really get captivated, just watch what they do. If their hand lifts for some reason, use it. If their eyes want to close, use it. I'll show you what to say. It's very simple. Use what your client's giving you. Okay. So if your client begins to drift further or close their eyes, you want to utilize it and continue your story. If your client becomes more conscious, stop the story and get normal ACH feedback. How you feeling? What's going on? Where'd you go? Welcome back. Whatever it is. Okay. You might just need to untie knots and go back to normal ACH. Now, the cool thing about when this stops or when this happens is you might only be halfway through a story, which is an open-ended story, which will probably bug the unconscious mind to figure out, why did we stop there? I don't have an ending to this. Has anyone watched a TV show where they have like the cliffhanger and it says to be continued? Or you go to the show starts in a couple of months from now. It's like the end of the season. It leaves on a cliffhanger. That's why they do it. So you come back. It's the same thing here. It's the same thing with that lady with Erickson. Erickson didn't finish the story. She came back and made her own conclusion. And when she told Erickson what her conclusion was, what do you think Erickson said? That's right. Not, no, that's not what I wanted you to get. I needed you to understand this. It's my cheeky way when someone asks me a question of 2 or 3 things, I say yes, or do this. That's my Erickson version of, you'll get it, you'll figure it out. You conclude what to get from that. Make sense? All right, so guidelines. There are no fixed story length. I heard some therapists say stories have to be 15 minutes. I don't know who comes up with these rules. It's ridiculous. A story can be a minute long. A story can be 2 hours long. A story can be just a small simile. Length is irrelevant, okay? Focus on impact, vagueness, not duration. Stories can have an ending or remain open-ended, which was Erickson's preference. Keep content vague and minimal in detail. This forces the unconscious mind to work harder, deepening the trance. Now, I've said that before, to keep things vague. And what part of the ACH process have I said to you? Keep things vague and with less detail. Anyone remember when I've mentioned that before? Just yell it out.
Is that when you were saying that, like, as little words as possible to the question?
Yes. So we know if we use vagueness in our hypnotic interview questions, do we get more conscious response or unconscious response? More unconscious, right? It's the same thing here. Okay. Everyone good with that so far? Any questions on the guideline before we get into timing? Do you have a question, Jordan?
Yeah. What do you recommend for, and maybe this is a question for later, but when they are really wanting more clarity from you of like, well, what does that story mean? Or what does that question even mean? I get that a lot.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to that.
Okay.
You nearly got to, because you'll answer it yourself. Okay. Now, if a client's coming, go ahead,
Sorry.
Ivan. Go ahead, Ivan.
Sorry, I've got a question. In regards to the drifting, Scott, it's you've taught us that they go into that place of when we spot an unconscious moment, grow the unconscious moment. Is that where the drifting is extended and we insert the story?
Yes.
So if they're not going into that place, their sort of fractionation is quicker, coming in and out.
Yep.
Are we still able to insert the story?
Why would you?
Okay. All right.
Makes sense.
You've answered my question. Yeah. There's no point in doing it. It's
Exactly.
when they're really floating in there.
Some clients deserve a story. Some clients do not.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. This is not all clients. This is not the training where we say all clients need this. How the hell would we know?
Yeah.
And this becomes an instinctual thing where you go, oh, I've got this story burning inside of me. Tell it, because it's probably the right time. But do not go into a session thinking, Ivan needs a story because he's a smoker and he's a male and all males that smoke need stories. Wrong. May as well just do a regression with everybody and fuck that up too.
Yeah.
Timing is key.
Yeah.
Your client will give you clues. Vina will give me clues about when I need to ACH and MAC her. We've been in that course. Now my clients will give me clues that they want a story. They need their metaphors extended. They need resource stacking. But I've got to watch for those things. So even when we do the demos, guys, the reason I'm doing the theory first is we can teach this and drill some things, but we might do the demos and think, fuck, none of those demos included this. That's the point. Because it might not. That's why you practice after this. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Scott, I have a quick question. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I usually do audio over the phone. So are you suggesting I go back to Zoom when you're talking about this works better if you can see your client?
No, because I did this without the camera on too. So instead of seeing the drift, what would a drift sound like? It's a bit of a weird question.
Pause, longer pause.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Mm-hmm.
That noise right there.
Yeah.
Humming.
Yeah.
Or you get the,
okay.
huh. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And I'm pretty good at picking up on those. So that would be the drifting. Okay.
Yeah. And if you can master it just auditorily, think what happens when you can see them. It's a piece of piss. It's easy.
Thank you for saying that. I was hoping I didn't have to go back to see.
Yeah, no. Why would you want to see people? That's ugh.
I know, exactly.
All right. So
Okay.
timing. Timing can be used
Scott,
early in a
sorry,
session.
can I ask
Yeah, go
a
for it.
question as well?
Go for it.
That you said, stories from books and movies and so on. Is there a reason for not just other stories, like stories from life and friends and
Yep, we'll get to
famous
that.
people? And
We'll get to that. But the easiest one is movies and life, because even someone who doesn't leave their house and has no social life and just likes to be a hermit can still tell great stories because they probably watched a few movies or read a few books.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense. We just started, but we will get to like slice of life stories, growing up as a child, all those things, because there's a certain theme that has a really good impact regardless of the client and the niche. Okay.
Cool.
Timing. So Erickson, like I said, he got to the point where he was only telling stories. And again, this might have just been his training style, not necessarily his therapeutic style. So you can tell stories right at the start, but it does trigger a lot of resistance because it's got nowhere to sit. Now, let's say Jordan comes into my office and he's already ETMing himself. He's full of emotions. He's already drifting. Could I use a story then? Probably. So that's the only time I use it, but that's very rare. Okay. It's best used during drift mode, which is just easy because you can utilize where your client is when the client is naturally receptive and reflective, more internal than external. Can also be used effectively on strategy calls when the context allows. So for those who did MAC, telling a nice story at some point or extending the different themes I give you when telling a client to get motivation and see the light at the end of the tunnel when they hit that knot on the strategy call. Telling a nice story might put them into a nice place. Now, get it out of your head that I'm using a story to do something. Like, I'm not using a story to hypnotize. I'm not using a story for anything else other than utilizing their drift. Now, if I have a purpose to my story and I'm trying to force a theme down Marshall's throat, what do you think will happen?
Resistance.
They resist. The unconscious mind's very, very receptive and perceptive. So instead, I keep it so vague. And the vaguer the story, and I'll talk about what Erickson would do as well, the vaguer the story and the more nonsensical the story, as in a non sequitur, does not fit, the more impact it has. Any ideas why?
They try to fill in whatever and they can't find. So they
Yeah.
drift even more.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, they fill
Again,
in, but they're filling in from their unconscious space.
Yes.
So it's actually got so much meaning when they fill in.
yeah. All they know is, I wonder why Scott's telling me why he tied his shoes this morning. Must mean something because he's a hypnotist and I'm a client. Oh, now I get it. If I loop it that way, my life will change. Is that what you meant, Scott? Absolutely, that's what I meant. I don't fucking have a clue. I'm just utilizing the drift that you gave me. Okay? And Erickson would tell, I'll talk about this in the worksheet. I won't spoil the surprise. I think it's a really cool thing to do. All right, so timing, important, just utilize. We've been doing that since we started any sort of training. Story structures. Negative to positive, which is pretty classical hero's journey. Who's heard of hero's journey before? Who's heard a hero's journey movie or read a book or something? They're all pretty, The Matrix, Harry Potter, they're all hero's journey. Okay. Started with the problem, all or nothing last ditch effort to escape the problem and the pain, completed the quest, become a better, stronger person. I think even Lord of the Rings, that would be, they're probably all the same. Okay. Pretty classical, pretty easy. All right. Number two, I like these. And when I've done storytelling through the demos, I always lean on this because it gives good inspiration to the client, which is a learning experience. This was a classical Erickson theme. Okay, an example of this, and we'll go through some more examples soon. What a baby learns taking its first step. Doesn't seem like much, does it? What do you think is going through the mind of that baby just learning to step or walk for the first time? So much learning is going on, from stepping to balancing, finding new environments, exploring. The mind and connections are learning so much. There's so many connection neural pathways being created just from something or putting one foot in front of the other. So by telling a client a story that they have already achieved in their life, what do you think it does to the unconscious? And here you are saying that you've got anxiety and you can't overcome it. See where I'm going? You've lived 40 years. For me, 42 years, and I'm complaining that I can't quit smoking. Do you think I've done more in my life that was more important and a lot harder to do than giving up this thing? Better believe it. So I'm saying indirectly to the unconscious mind, hey, idiot, you had this person walking and balancing and doing all these things, and you're telling me you're struggling with the quitting smoking thing? Although it's a symptom, just giving you guys a metaphor here, I'm inspiring the unconscious mind to go back and say, what did you learn then? What resources did you have then? Can't we just apply a couple of those things to this as well? See where I'm going with this? It's not belittling the problem, but it's allowing the unconscious mind to do what it does best. Maybe it's just forgotten or it's just a little bit stubborn. And by having a story that keeps it vague and having a client relive to some extent, you're just going to be a little bit careful of abreactions or a lot of regressions at this point. Having relived those things, those ideas, the connections, the new thoughts, the new learning comes quick. Why? Because they've already done it before. It's like if I go to Karen and Karen says, well, what's stopping you from quitting smoking? And say, well, I quit 30 years ago. I just started up recently. What have I just told Karen right now? I've done it before. Instead of Karen coming up with something new, why doesn't she just explore? Can't we just use what you did back then and just relive that and reuse that? Maybe that's all we need. And in most cases, that's what happens. Does that make sense, guys? Dinara, question?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, actually. You just answered, like, can we use something that if they tell us in the session that they've done it or they've overcome this before, and now 10 years later they're dealing with that again. So we don't go to the baby, we go to the 10 years before, right?
Yep. We ask, well, what did you do back then? What's different now? They go, well, I just stopped buying them. Interesting. And they go, huh. They're drifting. Now you attack them with a story about the baby taking its first step. Nothing to do with smoking. I'm not saying the baby stepped to the cigarettes and started smoking at 1 year old. I don't know how old kids are when they start to walk. And I'm not saying here you are, Dinara, you're the baby. Remember when you took your first step? No. It's not about you. It's not even about the baby. It's about all the processing that happened behind to get that baby to walk in the first time. That way I don't have to base things on stories. They're more themes. And that way they're open-ended. Make sense?
So we still do the story around not the 10 years ago, what one learns while they're quitting smoking, blah, blah, blah. But we ask the question and then go back to the baby kind of a thing. Is that correct?
We use the theme. I just think in my head, I've got a whole list of themes you guys can have here. We're going to do this as an exercise. Learning is just one of them because it's the easiest. Remember what it's like when you first learned to drive your car. When you first went to high school, you first learned to step as a baby. You first learned to talk. You first learned to recognize mum and dad. You first learned to recognize sounds and emotions and feelings. You had your first heartbreak. It can even be a negative story that turns more hero's journey that goes positive. But what Erickson would do, and I had this in the worksheet, but I'll say it now, is he would start telling things and saying shit out loud that was so non sequitur, had nothing to do with anything. So a classic example of this would be, and I saw this on a training tape, he's sitting around with his trainees, and they're all sort of going into trance, they're all drifting, and he's sort of slowed down, he's sort of looking around, see what everybody's doing, and then he says out loud, I think I better remind my wife to get milk. Nothing to do with anything. And then you see people going, because all in their mind, they're thinking, what does that have to do with this? It must mean something, right? We as people put meaning to everything unconsciously. It's like when you watch the clouds and you see a face in the clouds and all of a sudden you say, well, that's one of my passed away relatives, whatever it is. You add meaning to those things, like a bit of pareidolia type stuff. Same thing here. So again, in the worksheet, they're called non sequitur metaphors or non sequitur stories. And at the right place, they're so funny. You've got to avoid laughing yourself because you think this is stupid. But you say this outlandish thing, as long as it's not rude, and it has so much connection to the client. Why? Because they're in the right place to absorb it. Where if I was conscious, and let's say Denara came in, sat down, and it probably even work here. If she had enough trust in me and enough like, wow, this is Scott, I'm sitting with him for a session, this is really cool. And I say, what's the problem? She says, I'm a smoker. I know she would never do that. Ego. She sits down and says, I'm a smoker. And I say, well, what stops you from quitting? And she says, well, I can't. It's really hard. And I say, I've got to get milk on the way home. And you know what? That would probably work. If I don't draw attention, which is one of the instructions, I don't draw attention to it, she leaves the session going, what the fuck was that about? But I've already got her inspired. But again, that's caused a lot of resistance. Sort of see where I'm going?
To get milk.
Yeah, to get milk. Okay, makes sense. Another classical story of this is where Erickson, I forget the doctor's name, Dr. Zeig. I think I posted this in the group. And he was a smoker. And he talks about he'd go in to see Erickson, and Erickson didn't like people smoking. Talk about a conflict of interest. He went from, I can help people quit smoking, to now, if I don't like this in you and you're going to spend time with me, you need to change that. I wouldn't suggest that as like relationship advice, but there we go. So Dr. Zeig walked in, met him, I don't know, it was a couple of days later or whatever, off on first meeting, and Erickson fell into a story saying he had this client who wanted to quit smoking, and after working with him, found it so awkward to smoke because he couldn't figure out how to hold the cigarette in his hands. And then he found the client found it so awkward to smoke, you can hear the suggestion there, awkward to smoke, he didn't know what part of the mouth to put it in. And he said that Erickson told him this story for about an hour. Awkward to smoke, awkward to smoke, awkward to smoke. And because Erickson wasn't looking at him, he was sort of just sitting in his chair talking to nobody, Dr. Zeig's just watching him in trance thinking, what the hell is this? A week or so later, he quit. And he said, I quit because it's better for my health. But Erickson sort of forced him. But again, I think that would only work because of he had admiration for Erickson, and I think would work face on with a client. But you sort of get my point. Non sequiturs work if it's the right place. And I'll give you some examples. Okay? I'll come to your questions, guys, just in a moment. Let me just get through the story structure before we get into the first exercise. So learning experience is a huge thing, guys. What they learnt along the way, which is an extension of that. And lastly, number 4 could be like a slice of life. So learning experience, what a baby learns taking its first step. Number 3, what they learnt along the way is like general life learning. You know, a teenager learns to drive for the first time. What do they get from that? Freedom, exploration, pride. I don't have to say those things, but I just have to invoke the memory of someone learning to drive for the first time and what they got from that to inspire them further. But it's not the person driving, it's just out loud. Slice of life is really just overloading a blitz of positivity, growth, and happiness. Who's seen like a slice of life movie where it's just positive all the way through? Nothing happens. No one passes away. No one gets hurt. There's no real characters. It's just people fall in love, have a happy ending, buy the house, white picket fence, doves flying, all of that good stuff. And that's just it. So you can tell those stories where it's just non-stop positivity. It's just, we call that more, it's called a traditional blitz. Okay. So before we get into more themes, we're going to do this as an exercise. If you've got a notepad and pen, get it. We're going to do this as a group. I'll answer these questions first. Everyone with me so far? Who's getting inspired and saying, well, this is going to be quite easier than I thought? And it'd be silly of me to say, I have used Erickson stories to teach you this. Who would have thought? Trainers in the group. Do you know how sometimes I go off into a tangent and tell little stories and examples? That's the reason. You inspire your clients and ACH becomes easy to learn rather than just theory. Okay? Maya, go for it. Then we'll come to Robin.
Did you say the word pareidolia?
Yes.
Can you just, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's recognizing shapes and things that aren't there. So someone has a piece of toast and it looks like Jesus's face in the toast, and they take that from Jesus is trying to talk to me, which is fine. It makes them feel good.
So this is the practice of pareidolia.
Just in this regard. It's pareidolia where you're telling a client a story that's just out of nowhere, out of context, maybe a bit non sequitur, and they get something from it. They take away something from it that I didn't put in there purposefully. I see a shadow. I instantly think it's a ghost. Now my house is haunted. But it could have just been a car going past my house and causing a reflection. I'm getting something. I'm making my own conclusion of something that wasn't forced upon me.
The question I had,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
that was just a clarification. The question I really had to ask was, I mean, yes, I think all these babies' first steps and all these stories, I use them a lot and they work. But I have noticed in OCD, like advanced OCD, you start telling some kind of story and they say, but that's proof that I suck. That's proof that I didn't learn it. That's proof that I was smarter back then or whatever. And there's a whole rejection pattern of any like recognition the story
Yep.
could be educational.
So what
I
does
mean, I
that
guess
tell
you're going to say go back to ACH and untie the knot.
Yep. What does that tell you if a client rejects it?
Well, that they're not, that they're, I don't know.
That-
I mean, I feel like those two cases I'm thinking of were not actually willing to change. So I would like to know what else I could have done.
That's your pareidolia. That's your conclusion. All I take from it, and you might be right, all I take from it is they're not worthy of my story. I'll just shut up and stop talking. I'll stop telling them. I'll go to Mac instead, or I'll go to ACH.
They're not worthy of my
They're
story.
not worthy of my time, my story, but I'm worthy of their money. Yeah. Just not the right time. Maybe they weren't in the right place to absorb it. They're too conscious. That's what I was saying before. You tell stories and use metaphors when they're drifting, not when they're conscious.
But I mean, as the practitioner, I feel also they're telling me I'm
Yeah.
not going to do this in a fast way. So you
Yeah.
should not.
And that way you go, oh, cool, I know how to deal with that. Back to ACH. How does that work, client? I say, well, I don't know. Flashing reality. Do you see how many different directions I can now take this?
Yep.
So stories do invoke, and this comes in the worksheet as well, a lot of true unconscious payoffs, a lot of true unconscious stuff. But at its most basic level, if your story is not working, it's more about timing than the story itself. And the more in drift mode and dribbling on themselves they are, the worse the story can be, and they'll take so much away from it. But if you're a great storyteller on top of that, man, look out. You should be charging a hell of a lot of money. But it's all about timing. Makes sense? Robin, then we'll get to Barbara.
So my question is about calibration, really. So not necessarily what's obvious on the external calibration, but in a normal conversation, you could, let's say the therapist or the client, there'd be a sense of feedback. But let's say in that story structure there, let's say from not so good to good, to paraphrase it.
Yep.
So let's say ACH or MAC for the similar language.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere between that, if you had a conversation, you could spot the knot when it would pop up. But as you're telling a story, so my question is really with all that to say is, have you got any tips as to calibrate so you're spotting when a knot's coming up?
Yeah.
As they're in the middle of the story journey?
Great question. So I think what you're trying to say, what if I'm telling this great story and not start to appear? Should I switch to ACH and untie it? I might tell a part of the story might also have a theme that people now let go of things. And that little sly suggestion in there, I'm not saying you, I'm saying people. Let's say that's the theme. I'm saying people just let go of things.
So I'm not talking so much about the switch of, let's say, from ACH to MAC. I'm talking more of the becoming more fine-tuned with spotting when a knot comes up. In other words, the story, we may think it's a good story ourselves, but it may not resonate internally with their internal structure of how they construct reality.
Yep.
So have you got any tips to be more keenly aware of when that comes up?
Yep. I just know that my story will, if I've used the timing right and the drifting in the right place and I've told it at the right time, that story will have an impact at some point. It's like there's this suit, but there's one all the way down there, but it might take you 2 weeks before you get to it because you want to try on everything. And then it'll land. And believe it or not, guys, you may have been triggering this in your clients without doing this stuff, but now you've got it as a superpower, basically. When your clients come back and say, hey, I saw you a month ago, this has finally happened. That's all you've done. You've just inspired the mind to keep searching. What I want is that continuous search for the rest of their life to inspire them where one day, when they need it the most, the suit they're really looking for at that part of their life to overcome that certain problem is waiting there, and they will associate you. They'll remember you were saying this 6 months ago to them. That's what I'm looking for.
And one final part then, how much of what you're eliciting has come from the kind of conversation you had before the story?
It's more for me. I'm sure there are people that can do that. For me, it's on the spot.
That.
You get instincts at a time where you say, oh, I could tell a story right here. This would be perfect. I could resource stack right here, which is one of my favorite things to do. This sits perfectly right now. It's more instinct. Okay. But everything they've told me, I'm not really paying attention to, but it comes up in my head at the right time. Like, hey, Scott, remember when they said this 35 minutes ago? You better repeat that. And I go, oh, yeah, here we go. Give that back. And they go, oh, how did you know how to say that? It's more instincts in me. And that'll come by practice with real clients. Makes sense. I just don't want to fall into the trap of I'm going to start preparing for these. I'm going to go looking for the right time. It's more about a sense of noticing the right time. Big difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Barbara, go for
it. You were talking about the hero's journey, and I had a few clients at the end who were like creating their own hero's journey out of their problem. They said, like, I'm so glad I had this problem. I wouldn't have experienced all of that.
Yeah.
Is there any chance to use this as a story, or?
I would. At any time it's the right time and my client has given me a theme, I'll jump into a story or a metaphor if the timing is correct, if it's needed.
Okay.
Because what do you think would happen when you have all good intentions and you want to tell a story, but it's not the right time? Aside from resistance, what do you think might happen?
Well, they would drop out of their drift, probably.
Yeah. So it's like doing too much and not doing enough. We've got to go right in the middle somewhere, and it's all about timing. I'm going to keep saying timing, because that's what it is. Sometimes I get instincts, think, Scott, just shut up. Like, do not say a word. To now, you better tell a story, or you're going to have to refund this client. Like, this needs a story. Okay? And you get that instinct over time. Makes sense? Joanne, then we'll get to Jacob, then we'll keep moving on, guys. And you guys are going to do some exercises.
Just a quick question. I wonder if a person, you begin with a story and that person has an association, a negative association, maybe a trauma or something related to the story. Can this happen?
Yeah, so that's one thing. I think I mentioned this slightly before, but I'll bring it up now. You've got to be very, very aware, not careful, aware when you tell stories, regressions happen. Okay? Abreactions can happen. But I think if you keep the story light and the way you tell it, and it's not too negative, you bypass a lot of those things. Okay, but just got to be aware. Those things will pop up because you're inspiring the mind to go to places to remember how to do things, quote unquote, whether those nightmarish type things might be. But I think there's just as much chance of just doing normal ACH and that'll happen. Just be more aware of it. Okay. So when I would do pain control with my athletes and I jump into a story, that's when I tended to notice it because of the event and the pain. Maybe they had a car crash and banged their head. That tended to come up even when my story was all slice of life and everything was awesome. So I just got to be aware of that. Okay. And if that happens, go into ab reaction drill. Very simple. Jacob, go for it.
So on principle, is it that sometimes you're crafting some story that like maybe some metaphor pops into your head, you're not putting them in it, but it kind of fits the situation. But then there's also like sometimes like the story doesn't like literally doesn't have any meaning. Like your basic frame is like something meaningful happened, but like maybe it's better to kind of stay out of the way instead of like trying to like actually craft a metaphor unless something just occurs to you.
Yep.
Because otherwise you
It's
might be
false.
tacitly putting them in it without using their name.
Exactly.
You
I don't
don't
want
you
to
don't want a
force it.
heavy-handed metaphor.
Yes. The vaguer the story, the more non sequitur it is, the more power it has. The more out of the blue.
So it could be something like really like small scale, like some how I made my coffee this morning and the coffee maker didn't work, and you know like it could be like really like small,
Yeah.
not dramatic, you know, epic
Shouldn't be
stories, right?
dramatic.
Like just
Big dramatic stories are obvious. But there I am needing a coffee. My whole life's turning to shambles. And I'm looking at the one thing that could change my life. Hear what I'm doing right now? I'm adding
yeah.
meaning to staring at my fucking kettle that's not working.
Uh-huh.
And it was only till I realized this one thing that I think most people do not think about when times are tough. I can buy another kettle. Maybe even better than this one. So that's what I did. And boy, I felt good inside. It's so cheesy doing it now, but at the right time, you get sucked into that. And what am I saying as an inference? There are ways to solve your problem. There are other things we can do. What if we slow down and think things through properly instead of reacting? What if I stop being so emotional? There's so much hidden meaning, but I'm not forcing that on them. I'm not saying there I am pondering my emotions. And I'm wondering, wow, my life is horrible. And then I felt good. And then I felt bad. And I wondered if this means, just like you told me, Jacob, it all started because I'm not doing that. I'm just making a massive event out of tying my shoelaces.
So as you're performing it, you are like infusing it like tonally with meaning.
Pareidolia. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
If I tell a boring story like there I am looking at my kettle, wasn't working, and I was thinking, woe is me, my life sucks. Why does this always happen to me? Oh God, I'm thirsty. If I'm bored and not making it dramatic, they have no reason to get sucked into it. Makes sense?
Okay. Because like I have some recollection of like when Erickson would do stories, he would have this like kind of quiet, dull sort of performance, like that's kind of like lulling you. Is that a different thing, or is that
I
just
think
another way
that
of
was
this?
that was just him because he had no voice and he was in pain. But I'm not saying it doesn't work. That's why I think those things worked so well. But people say, no, it's the story, it's the words. He scratched his nose. No, it's because people couldn't hear him, and he had a croaky voice. That's when people started to really talk about him when he was more disabled, unfortunately. And that's when you get sucked in. Because even when I used to watch his tapes, that's how I know I'd go in a trance and fall asleep because I couldn't hear what he was saying. And I'd be sitting there going like this.
Yeah.
So engrossed. People could be breaking into my house and stealing my stuff, but I'm trying so hard to listen. I'm trying to listen to the words and I'm getting sucked into the environment of it. That's what I'm going for. If I make it dramatic and slow down and make something seem so catastrophic when it's really not, I'm adding emotions where they don't need to be. It's a non sequitur. The client's conscious mind thinks, why are you telling me this? Conscious mind gets overloaded trying to figure it out, goes unconscious. And as long as I don't draw attention to it and say, hey, Jacob, I'm about to tell you a story. Once upon a time, that's obvious. I don't want to do that, but I can start my stories with through inference by the way people have always been told stories. So the very art of telling a story invokes the once upon a time type stories you were probably told as a child. And the conscious mind has been trained at that point to go away for a while. Just like when you see the big Warner Brothers, I think it's Warner Brothers, like logo on the cinema. That's like telling your customer, hey, go away for a while. I want to enjoy Harry Potter 10 or whatever it is. So the very art of doing this creates trance. Where people get caught into it is they include the person. They make it so stupidly obvious. Or they're doing it for trance. We're doing it for therapy. Big, big difference. But it can be just the kettle story. It can be tying the shoelaces. It can be a baby first learning to walk.
Okay.
Okay. So let's get into the story themes, guys. I'll get you guys to write some more down. Let's do a list of these things. So story themes, topics, and ideas. It's how the unconscious mind can learn faster, to re-invoke what it's done in the past. So it could be baby's first steps, learning to drive, learning a new language, learning your ABCs, dating, it says darting, so I should say dating for the first time, learning hypnosis, having your first client, change, adapting, learning, growing, becoming more, overcoming adversity. Let's get another 10 themes. What do you think? With the keyword learning.
How fast it can be.
How fast it can be. Yep.
Transformation chain.
Yep. Now, I don't want to be too heavy and too on the nose with a transformation story. I can do it indirectly by the baby stepping or something like or learning the ABCs. You can do it that way. But I don't want to tell a story of, this reminded me of my last client, Magdalena, and God, she transformed. Incredible. And there she was sitting there wondering, when is it going to happen to her? Too obvious.
Yeah.
But I can talk about how Magdalena or a client of mine or just someone in general could prepare for a holiday of a lifetime. What's going through their mind? What are they feeling? Why are they going? Who will they meet? What will they do? How will they spend their money? What negative and positive experiences? Yeah.
People assume it's going to take a certain amount of time until you give them an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
Yep. What else? What other themes might be useful? Just think learning. Learning themes and learning stories tend to be the easiest, and I find it inspires the mind a lot more. What else?
Realizing that you've made a spelling error and that it.
Yep.
Cooking a dish.
Is that a stab at me, Magdalena? Yep. Learning how to read for the first time.
What about like as you said here, what about the preparation just in general, preparing for anything? Because preparing their mind for things to change, I guess. So you're preparing for holiday, whatever.
Yep. Sports stories.
Learning to play a game.
Learning to play a game. Yep. What else?
It could be something mechanical, let's say with their hand, learn to open the hand and let's say drop something.
Yep. What about when a child first recognizes a foot or a hand and then realizes something important? They have more than one of each in most cases. And then to distinguish what is left and right. And what are these little things on the end of my feet? Oh, they're toes. And from those toes, there are nails. See, I'm just saying stupid shit right now, but it's true. But if I add meaning to it, I'm invoking that representation they had when they were a child because they had to go through that in some respect. We all did. Doesn't seem like much now, but I guarantee you learn more about life at that stage than where you are now in life. Who would agree? Because you have less resources, you have less of everything at that stage. You are a virgin to all of it. So recognizing a foot or recognizing your mum and dad's voice has more growth inside your mind than you saying, I've got anxiety, I can't overcome it. Or I can't get my first client. I don't want to charge so much. I don't want to do a Facebook Live. That's scary. Holy shit, look at all the other stuff you've done. And that's what you're worried about? Do you see where we're going with invoking that part of the mind? It's revivifying the mind that has done more than this. Okay. What other themes might we have?
So
learn to play together. Brilliant. Getting a friend for the first time.
How about fear? The themes of fear, because babies are constantly scared and then realizing it's not like something to be scared about.
Yeah. So you take that theme of, which is more of a hero's journey. I've got fears and I realize I can overcome them. What goes through the mind? What has to happen here? How does a baby adapt to these things? And I can just draw it out and just repeat the same things. But if I put my Erickson voice on, big smile on my face, looking around the room and getting my gestures involved, consciously my client's saying, what does it have to do with anything? But unconscious is going crazy with this stuff. Make sense? So yeah, playing with people, getting a friend for the first time, having your heart broken, then realize there's more fish in the sea or whatever they say.
Learning to cook, like just learning a recipe of something, or
yeah, learning a recipe.
First day at school.
What's that, Paul?
First day at school.
First day at school. I thought you said stay in school. I was going to say don't do that, but yeah, first day at school, absolutely. Something so small that has a massive outcome. Learning, there's a lot to learn. What other things have we done in life? We had to learn a lot. For trainers, you could talk about a person learning ACH for the first time. Bit on the nose, but it'd help. What else? Enjoying yourself. Yep.
So I used to have a friend, and when we were like maybe 15 or something, she used to really annoy us because she used to always tell these wondering stories like, oh, I wonder where this plant comes from and this flower is just growing. I was like, oh, shut up. Can we say that? Because that's in my head now, like,
Yep, say it. But make it seem so dramatic. And boy, did you learn from those stories, Dinara.
Yes, I still remember them.
I wonder why.
Can you also use like having children or getting married and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Having your first child.
Okay.
Deciding to have a child. Regretting having a child. I'm just joking. But yeah, absolutely. What other learning?
Travel, exploring new places.
Exploring new places. These are all things you've done. Now, the problem with these is they seem so simple that you'll tend to stumble over these stories and try and make them more than what they are. Do not do that. Getting a friend for the first time, leave it like that, but just make it really fucking dramatic. And dramatic is probably not even the right word. I need to pick a better word, but I hopefully get my point. Okay. You might think, well, how can I tell a story about the first time I learned to drive? It was what it was. Go through the mechanics of it. What this person must have been feeling, what they got from it, the mistakes they made, how life opened up for these people.
Is dynamic the right word?
Yeah, dynamic's good. Yep.
Scott, and if there's a problem about, like, I don't know, if there's a problem with food, for example, can you tell a story about food? If there's like eating problem that they come for you to you with.
Yeah, as long as it's not too on the nose. Jokes aside.
Yeah.
There's my pun. Because food sometimes smells. It's bad. You shouldn't have to explain your jokes, but sometimes I do. But yeah, absolutely. What I would rather do is just tell a story that has nothing to do about anything. Contextually. Here I am, my client comes in with a food phobia, and I'm talking about when this person I know got accepted to the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. What does that have to do with food? Nothing. Consciously. But I can throw in themes that would attach because they're all universal.
It works on the mind because now I'm thinking, right, so maybe they were so good at cooking and they were mixing all the chemicals together that they became like witches and wizards.
It's magic how they did it. I mean, who would have thought to put this ingredient with that ingredient? Two things that look so disgusting together went together so perfectly that it drew people's attention. Just coming up with shit on the spot, but I'm making it fit the context, not the content. If you're too heavy-handed, I hear Christina tell me, starting to go, oh, I know what you're trying to do. Consciously. I don't want that. That's the psychotic inside. So again, as you get better at these and you sort of let go of any inhibitions, you start telling stories that have no themes attached, but the way you tell it draws an inference that maybe there is something I should be getting from this. That's a better place to be. And again, that's what Erickson would do over time. His stories fit nothing. They just come out of the blue and people are like, what? And then 6 months later, their life's changed. So you might start off with a very basic on the nose stories, but then they just come out of nowhere. Makes sense? Did I get that witchcraft and wizardry thing right? I was practicing that. Right? Any other themes or topics, guys? What else?
Squirrel burying and then finding some nuts.
Perfect. What else?
Something that starts small, like planting a plant and then it grows.
Yep, that's the classical tomato plant. Yep. I mean, how does a tree know what to do? If my client's drifting and I say, I wonder how a tree would know to do that, and it doesn't fit the context, and Jordan's drifting, probably going to take a lot of meaning from that. Okay, and again, I just have to watch out for any regressions or anything. I am drifting. Yeah, it should be. Told enough stories.